Today we're going to do a 4-nozzle kit on the T100. Right now it's got the stock, as you can see, the single nozzle kit on each arm. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take out the old solenoid out of the arm because we are going to need it for the next arm. So you take your screws out. As you can see, they're Loctited very well. Never going to come out. All right, so once you've got the 4 screws, and everything that I'm doing is either a 3mm or a 2.5mm hex key. So right now what I'm going to do is, you can see there is the solenoid there. I'm just going to loosen off my wing nut here so I can take off the forward point as we get through here. There it goes. And there's also the silicone that is going to stay with it. So you can see I'm just pulling it down a little bit, pulling the plastic off of there, which is difficult sometimes. There it goes. All right, so for the connection on here, it's actually a 2.5mm. So I'm just going to grab my 2.5mm, put it in my drill, and loosen this off. So there's 2 screws. And they come out, and then you just carefully pull the connector off. You can see it's keyed. There is a keyway on there, and there is a keyway inside of there. If you can see it, it's kind of hard to see. So we're going to set this aside, and we're just going to put it on the table here. We're going to need the wing nut, so pull the wing nut off of there. Everything else can stay with the arm itself. On the base of the drone here, I'm just going to push this forward a little bit, and I'm going to remove this wing nut and pull that off. Again, save the wing nut. And on the back side of here is a connector. So you're just gonna, it's clipped in, so you're just gonna pop it out of the clip. If you're gentle with it, you just, so you don't break that clip off, okay? And then it's, you just squeeze here and pull. Sometimes it's difficult, you just gotta kind of work it out. Sometimes I just have to put my fingernail in there and just pop it so it unlocks it. And then once it's unlocked, it comes off easier. So you just wiggle it, it comes out. That's what it looks like, okay? Once that's disconnected, that means all this arm now is disconnected. There are 2 just covers basically over the mount. And I just take a flat screwdriver and just carefully go into one of the corners and just pop it out real careful. It just pops out. You just carefully take it out. Just be careful. There are some attach points here that go into some very fine little points in there. Just be cognizant that they are there and don't wreck them. And same on the bottom. You're just popping it into a corner here and just taking that out nice and gentle like. Okay, so there's your 2 covers. Inside the covers, you're going to see there are 4 screws holding this arm onto the mount on the frame. And I'm going to need my 3mm, and I'm going to undo those. As you can see, all the dust that came off there, again, lots of Loctite. Way more than needed to be. Well, you can see it around the screw on there. It's just caked in there, so. And then I got to hold the arm And take this last screw out. Okay, now carefully, you just feed everything out of the two holes. So you got a connector on the front side there, and you've got your liquid tube on the upside or on the back side here. So carefully pull that out, and as well pull this out. There. So there's the old one out, or it's not an old, but the single. I'm just going to set it aside here. So the new arm requires a different mount. So this is the new mount for it here. It is a little bit different than the original one. You can see it's got a little bit different inside here. It's a little bit stronger built. So there's actually 5 screws on here that you got to take out. Remember this center one, because a lot of people forget it. And then they don't understand why they can't get this thing out. And there goes the nut for it. Okay, so the nut's on the back side of the mount here, and I'm just going to pull that screw out. So you can see that's a long screw. It goes all the way through the arm of the landing gear, so it needs to be fairly long. And then I just work my way around here, pulling out shorter screws. All the ones on the mount are black. All the ones on the actual arm are silver. So it's easy to remember which is which. Again, they all have backing nuts that are nylon locking nuts. So there's no requirement to put any kind of Loctite on those. All right, so there's the mount off. Just gonna set my drill down. Oop, there goes the screw. All right, so there's the original one that we're not going to need anymore, and I'm just going to take the nut out of the back of there because I'm going to put new nuts in. It came with new ones, so I will use them. Okay, just set this aside. While we're here, you'll see that this has a Y on it already from the factory. All you do is you unscrew the thumb nut, pull it out. This is just a cap. You just pop it off, and that's where you're going to plug in your second line now. Again, we're going to be reusing those butterfly nuts, so don't lose them. All right, so now, as you can see here, I've got the new arm, which has got the extra set of nozzles on it. The problem we have is it doesn't come with the one solenoid. That's why you had to take it off the original one. So carefully, I usually just set it down between here. So this is how the solenoid looks, and you'll see here, there's the plug-in for the solenoid, is the 2-pin. This one is the control for the motor and the power and everything for the motor, and it just needs to be up in that little groove so that it can be plugged in later. So you just make sure it's there. You take your solenoid itself, you find the keyway, you plug your plug-in into it. And I always like, especially with these fine screws, I always like to start them by hand and just get them started by hand first, especially these little guys. That way you're not cross-threading it or anything else. So just put those on. You'll see here, if you watch the gap here, as I tighten it in, that gap's going to go away. You do not need to have these super, super tight. I usually go pretty much my finger tight and then a little bit more with the drill, but in this case, because it cleaned up nice and there's no gap there, I'm just going to leave it as it is. They're pretty solid screws and stuff, so they won't go anywhere. Now, what I like to do now is actually connect all of my hoses before I put it in there. So the kit comes with a new silicone hose. You just slide it on to the bottom of the motor here. It's a little difficult, just take your time. Okay, put it on there and then slide it onto the solenoid itself. So it's just, they're tight. Okay, so you'll see there, it's now all on there. You also have this hose here, which needs to go on this part. So this is where we come in with our leftover wing nuts that we took off from the other two spots. Now this is clipped here. I like to unclip it so I can manipulate the hose a little bit better to get it on here. So what I do is, and you'll see here, this is angled. I don't know if you can see it better that way, but it's got a bit of an angle on it. So I usually try to line that angle up so that it's going to be on a bit of an angle towards where the clip is. So something like that. So now I got to put my wing nut on, slide this onto the barb carefully as best you can. You got to lift the wing nut up in order to see that you have it all the way down. I'm just going to push it down a little bit more here. Yeah, we're good there. And then I'm just going to tighten up the wing nut. So once that's tight, okay, so there you see it's tight there now. I'm going to go ahead and push the solenoid into the spot where it belongs. And you'll see here there's 4 screws that hold it all in. So I like to make sure that I keep a good check on everything here. It's a little snug. You got to be a little bit aggressive with it. So there you go, it's in. Now we got all new screws that came with it. So I'm going to put them in. They've already got the blue on them, so you shouldn't need to add more Loctite onto them. And all I'm doing here is I'm just putting them in finger tight so that I'm not going to cross thread them. Some of them are a little bit tricky because you got to manipulate the solenoid a wee bit. There it goes. Oh, thought I had it. There it goes. Okay, those 2 are on. Now I'll do the other side. So you can see here, I just got to push that down just to line up the screw holes. Once they're lined up, then I go ahead and put my screw in. Okay, screws in. Grab the drill. Now, this is a 3 mil. Pretty much everything on this thing is 3 mil. Make sure you're going tight, not loose. And just tighten them in nice. Okay, you can see here there's still gapping in there, and that's normal. It's going to stay like that, it's fine. Okay, I'm going to clip this back onto the clip that it came on, like so. Now, I'm going to have to put my mount on, so let's put that aside for now. So this is the new mount. You'll see on the mount there's actually a dowel or a pin that you can put in so that it lines up with right here on the actual bar itself. So you just take it, you line it up, and it will only fit one way. Okay. Next one, you put a nut in the back here for that long center screw. So I'm kind of doing this blind, but there it goes. All right, and then you take your new long screw like that, and you feed it through. It's a little tricky. You gotta feed it through the bar so it's, yeah, feel it, yeah, there we go. So I start it by hand just to make sure that it's got some bite there and it's good. Okay, so that one's good. I'm gonna take my other ones here and I'm gonna actually put them in so they all have a new nut. And they're all nylon nuts, so they're locking, and you just slide it in to the backing on there and start the screw. I'm going to tighten that center one down a little bit So as you can see, I've got my finger on the nut in the back so I don't push it through when I'm pushing in on the screw a little bit here. There, so they're nice and tight. So I just work my way around, putting the nuts in the back, screws in the front. Okay, now just work my way around here. Okay, so now we have our new mount on there. We can attach our new spray lance. So you'll see here, there's a little keyway on the top here. And if you look on the top of the mount, there's actually a line there. So you just align those up and you grab yourself one of your silver screws. Sorry, Miles, am I in your way? So, as you can see here, I got to feed these through the mount to get to plug them in on the other side. Sometimes they're a little stiff. There it goes. And you just feed them in. Kind of keep them out of the way here. This is a little tricky. You got to kind of be a bit of a contortionist. Line everything up. So if you want to come to the other side over here, Miles, you'll see here's my line right here, and here's that notch that I was talking about. So if you just make sure that those are pretty much lined up, that'll line up all your screws and everything. Okay, now I'm just going to loosen this one back off. Tighten it down. Okay, and then I got 2 more screws that go in the bottom. Oh, need to be a little bit adjusted here. There it goes. Okay, and last but not least, all right, so just go around, make sure they're tight. Okay, so now we have the arm installed. Now we have to do all of our connections. So you'll see you have this connection here, this hose here that comes from the inboard module. It will have to be attached on the top side here. So what I do, you take your thumb nut and you slide that on there. Make sure it's down all the way by pulling the nut back and just checking. And then you spin the actual nut on. Like that. Now the bottom one, again, you're going to need your thumb nut. This one gets curled like so. And then you put your nut on it. And you just slide that up on. Now you can see that one is easy. It actually come up nice to the threads, and then you just thread that on. Okay. So now we have all the plumbing connected. Now we have to do the electrical. So the electrical takes two parts. First part is this connector here that we took off from the original one, and it just connects to here on the new arm. You just snap it in, you hear the click, and then it gets snapped up onto this storage spot here. Carefully put it on there without breaking. These are a little bit tough. That, and I don't want to break it. So there, that's all sit in there now. So now, if you want to come around to the front, Miles, we have to install the new control wire for the actual inboard nozzles. So you'll see here, this is our control module for the sprayer. And on here, there's two screws where we have to remove those two screws and connect this plug to it. So this is a 2.5 millimeter screw. So we're just gonna disconnect these two. Now this is just a blanking plug that I'm removing here. You can see here it's got a really nice O-ring on it. Don't lose that O-ring. So you'll see on the original one it has its own O-ring. So just take that off, put it with the blanking plug. Okay, now this is keywayed. There's a notch here, and then if you look up inside there is where the other notch is. I don't know if you can get it in there with enough light, but it will only go on one way. So you slide it in carefully and tighten it. Again, these little screws, they don't need much for torque. Just tight. And you can see when it's tight, when it's nice and flush mounted on the actual board itself. So you'll see here now that it's installed. All I do now is I run it along, and you'll see on the bottom of the tank here, there's actually set up spots here for the cable to run. So you just follow that along. You push your cable in as you go. You gotta kind of push it and work it in as you go here. I'm just going to use the back of my screwdriver here and just kind of use it as a means to push in a little bit better than my fingers. I'm not using the front part or the sharp part of the screwdriver, just the back of it, because you don't want to nick these wires. You just want to get them up inside that groove inside the, or on the bottom of the tank here. Okay, so now that I've got this here, this now has to run up. And there's a little clip underneath here, and it just snaps into that clip right there. And then it snaps, this then will actually be attached to here. So clip that on there. Carefully, you'll hear the clip. And then you slide that on there, such like that. So now, if you see, that one's all installed. I'm going to go to the other side now and do the same thing on the bottom of the tank on this side. Snaps that on there, snaps in there like that. And that's it. I got to now put my covers back on, and we will be done. So carefully. There's only one way these things will go on. You'll see the little clip there and the little clip there. There's a hole here and a hole back here. You just kind of line it up as close as you can. It can be a little bit of a trick to get it to go. You got to just kind of work it in there like that, and then there's a clip on the front and the back. You just, oop, that one didn't pop. There, like that. And that's the top one. And do the same on the bottom one. Hey, such like that, all done. So now we have a 4 nozzle kit fully installed on our T100.